Oh no, it's me, Guts Zercarella, and I'm just a guy who has a very healthy amount of appreciation for an anime and manga series where a guy with a big sword travels to different spiritual realms and battles big babadooks and spooky goblins, and it starts with a B and it ends with a K.
Wanna be a wannabe? Like and subscribe.
Berserk is one of those stories that is so singularly specific and awe-inspiring in what it's capable of that discussing it is really difficult. Especially if you're me and you don't know anyone in your circle of friends or in the real world who has experienced the whole thing. I know some people who have seen the anime or who have seen some of the other adaptations, like the movies, but I'm the only person that I know who has read the manga. And I just need to get the thoughts I have on Berserk out of my head because my alternative is going to discuss them with fans on Reddit or insert other social media platform that to my average viewer would be more damning and bizarre and unapproachable than Reddit, because that's what we do here on YouTube. We like to create broad stereotypes and assign a label to entire communities. And that's what I'm doing right now, right here. But more importantly, I have to talk to somebody about Berserk, so all of you, are going to be the people that I talk to about my hot takes, or perhaps cold takes, or just my responses to what makes Berserk cool. And first and foremost, I think what makes Berserk cool is that it's a guy named Guts with a huge sword, and he swings it, and things die. He blows up everything in his path with his big, mighty, big swingy thing. He doesn't afraid of anything. He's got a little, companion, a little Legend of Zelda Navi creature that is always getting on his case and being like, oh, Guts, don't be such a cool edgelord. You gotta be a lame boy sometimes. You gotta have emotions. But Guts ain't having it. Guts is the coolest, sliciest man. And the reason, number one, and this is an original Guso Milcarella take here, the number one reason is that he's got a big sword and he cuts with it and things die. That's the appeal. That's everything. We could end the video right here because I, right here and now, have solved it. But I want to go a little bit deeper into that particular aspect of it because there are few rare I can barely string the words together when I think about the big sword, because the big sword is... It is rare that you see a character with such an iconic fighting style that immediately, changes media forever. You've got... What are some of the greatest designs of all time? I'm just going to list a bunch of random things that don't really attach to my main point. Pinhead from Hellraiser. He's pretty iconic. The Pyramids of Giza. A real iconic... One of the 7 wonders of the world, I've heard. But neither of those things mean anything compared to Guts and his big sword. And obviously, many have tried to recapture the appeal of the big sword. Many have failed in that they didn't succeed to do the specific same thing. They might also have been great icons in their own way, but I think, personally, the only thing that has ever come close to the sword feel that I feel when I look at Berserk is playing Ganondorf in Super Smash Bros. Ultimate. For a while, I myself was a Ganon main. Is it because I have no self-respect? Is it because I like punishing my opponent's mistakes when they're just off their game? Maybe it was that first thing, but the truth behind all of it is the Doria. The Doria is why. And the Doria is what Guts do. It's what he do best. Ganon is Doria. Ganondorf might as well be called Ganondorya. because he's got that sword, and boy does he swing it with the overhand chop and the big Doria! And so, I'm glad that Ganondorf's Doria, which is the platonic ideal of a sword swing, has a manga adaptation. And that manga adaptation is Berserk. And that's why Berserk is great. Cue fake ending of the video right here. I did it. I'm gonna go take a sip of coffee because I nailed it. It's over. I solved it. I solved Berserk. I'm the YouTuber. I'm making a video about Berserk, and it's the best video about Berserk that there ever has been. It's the only video about Berserk that you may ever watch, because chances are there's at least a few of you out there who follow this channel and, like the majority of people in my friends group, have not picked up Berserk, have not watched any of the anime, have not read any of the manga. And to all of you, I need to give an emphatic, I get it. But wait a second. No, wait a minute. A new golden age is dawning because there are people I can talk to. There is a community I can find, and it's the people who have seen the Golden Age arc. Those 3 movies, or the original anime. Yeah, the Golden Age arc. That's Berserk, right? Like, you know, meeting up with the Band of Hawk, Griffith, and Casca, and Corcus, and Judo, and the third one, and the 4th one, Rickard. Yeah, that's his name. I don't know the big guy. I can picture him, but he's the guy. He's the guy from the A Forces, the Yu-Gi-Oh card, and also on Cry Havoc. Yeah, it's that guy on the Yu-Gi-Oh card. So he's part of the Band of Hawk. And in the Band of Hawk, let me tell you, it's the best. It's the best. It's so good. The Golden Age, so good. Everyone's having a good time. We love being friends. We love going on adventures. It's medieval, and there's battles, and it's none of this frou-frou fantasy stuff, and it's none of this like rar demons stuff. It's like, you know, that's Berserk. That's the good nooch. That's the Berserk that I know, that I care about. I love that from the beginning all the way to the big end with the big surprise and then there's demons. There's demons everywhere, and they're good and they're not good, and they're the best in that moment with the thing and the other thing, and then that happens, and it's whoa, ooh, even describing, no. And then that's it. That's the end of everything. That's the end of society. That's the end of Berserk. That's the end of it's done. You know? That's all. That's everything. That's what a lot of people think Berserk is. A lot of people who waited in limbo for an anime which, you know, Berserk 2016, Berserk 2017, not so good, not great. I don't like them. Gah. But if you read ahead through the manga, past that point, I think personally, that's where the real good nooch is. That's where the best of Berserk really is. It's beyond that point. The untamed waters of the unadapted, unwell adapted material. But yeah, no, I could, like, you know, double back and get mad and make that the thesis of the video about, like, you know, people only like the iconic stuff, but then when the time comes to actually, like, you know, push themselves through the story and unpack its grander themes, they're not signing up for it. And Star Wars and Lord of the Rings are both way worse in that regard, and they have a much bigger, like community cachet. And no, I'm not talking about the works themselves. I'm talking about the, the phenomenon that they are. And if you're asking me personally, but my opinion doesn't matter, you could click out this window and literally erase it from existence. Lord of the Rings, it holds up to scrutiny, and Star Wars, I think, is its iconography. It's designed to be its iconography. It is very much a, dream of Flash Gordon and those serials that it's based on. It is very much a shadow play, engaging with, the monomythic stuff. I do not take Star Wars, in its original incarnation, to be a literal story. It is a story of archetypes that dance on an empty stage, which is not meant to be thought about or filled with interesting things. It is very clearly centered around these, big, larger-than-life figures, and we just don't think about the fact that everybody who is important comes from a bunch of nowhere useless planets where people just sit around and fuck sand all day. That's what Star Wars is. And if you're a prequel fan, I'm sorry. I'm sorry that you like political Star Wars better. I'm sorry that you enjoyed the most... This is a Berserk video. We're not doing the Star Wars rant. We are not going there. There is no point to adding more negativity about Star Wars to YouTube. It's already 90% that. In the same sort of media spaces that me and my fellow creators here at We Are Not Alive vaguely operate in. The last thing I want to do is get involved in a Star Wars nonsense culture debacle. In this video, at least. And that's an invitation for everybody I know to hold me down and stop me. Because I need to be stopped. If I'm not stopped, I could end up just like an apostle. I could sacrifice a whole bunch of important things in order to defeat the Star Wars. Just like the next character that I want to talk about in the most seamless segue that any man on YouTube has ever been capable of. That's right. I want to highlight one of my favorite characters from across Berserk. A true demon king. A character who I believe is not just criminally underspoken about. I think he is one of the most pivotal, important, and just flat out interesting characters across the entire manga. I am speaking, of course, of Ganishka, the emperor of the Kushan Empire. And in any other story, any other fantasy story, he would be the big bad guy. We know that Griffith is manipulating things behind the scenes in order to play the hero on the grandest scale possible. And I like that Ganishka is a guy who, he kind of gets what's going on with Griffith. Little by little, he starts piecing it together, and it frustrates him. And he, who lived his entire life in the most ruthless, cutthroat, aristocratic world, building his way up, and realizing the truth behind all of it, that there is this, sort of idea of evil, and these invisible, forces, like the God Hand and all their monsters, that are shaping fate, that are twisting the world, and that he is just a product of that. He's a character in this story who is not, breaking the fourth wall, but understanding the meta mechanics behind the world building, and the fact that, he himself is at a certain rung of that. He might be a leader among humans, but among the apostles, he is always going to be underneath the God Hand. And the fact that makes him so angry that he is willing to not just try and rule the world, but try to overthrow the God Hand themselves. It's a really like fascinating look at like what the apostles can be when they just do as they will, which is their commandment. And he will himself to be greater than all the gods. Ganishka is a horrible monster and a product of a terrifying, toxic environment through and through. And he is ultimately born to be a loser on a cosmic scale that he is not aware of. And yet, the idea that somehow, somewhere, he is struggling against that he sees this world for the horror show that it is, and still believes that he can be someone who affects change in it, even if that means just putting himself on the top and out of harm's way, I think is an incredible counterpoint that makes the text of Berserk as a whole a richer place. All right, just briefly want to touch on the whole Griffith side of the equation, because, the stuff with Ganishka, I don't want to spoil it. I don't know why I don't want to spoil it, but Griffith, like, he just styles on this man's whole existence. He ruins his life again, and then he proceeds to use Ganishka as a tool to ruin everybody's lives basically forever. Griffith does a Star versus the Forces of Evil cleaved moment right there. He does a big cleave and changes everything forever. It's the Fantasia. He did it. And let me tell you something about that. I've been meaning to get this off my chest for a long time. Because all of you, none of you were ready, and none of you are still ready, but I'll tell you what, and I'll tell you now.
How many times do I have to teach you this lesson, old man?
You know what? Never mind. It's really not worth it. I was never really that into that show in the first place. Like, especially not like Berserk. I mean, I think my mind wanted something like the Fantasia to exist in fiction, but I didn't know yet at the time that it did. And it's in Berserk, it's way cool, it's way interesting, and the narrative explores all the implications after that, and it's preceded by genuine ideological clashes that have a greater depth than some, slightly above average at times children's show can possibly accomplish.
Is what I would say if there wasn't an entirely different animated series that my ravenous brainworms compel me to compare to post-Fantasia Berserk. It's time to talk about the horse. Ah, no, not that horse. The one from Netflix. No, not him either.
Yeah, I know what you're thinking. What? Are you crazy? Are you insane? Why are you comparing a Netflix show from like a couple years ago to the greatest dark fantasy manga of all time? You're crazy, you're insane, you're stupid, and that's true, and you should definitely comment that. Please do. I need to be kept in check. I can't be stopped, but I am not lying about the fact that we've got ourselves a show where a battle-hardened warrior who had someone, another warrior, very precious to this character, taken away in a tragic circumstance by magic that is far beyond this character's control, is then thrust into a new world, an unrecognizable one, full of bizarre supernatural happenings, and is joined by a group of friends that slowly teach this character that being a battle-hardened, merciless warrior is not the only way to be.
In Centaurworld.
What Horse and Guts both learn in their journeys is that they are not mere tools of war. that there is something more to them, something about their person that is beyond their utility to others. Sometimes it's okay to let people in, to let those people be there for you. And I am definitely not saying that if you like Berserk, you'll like Centaurworld, or if you like Centaurworld, you'll like Berserk. I'm not saying that. I'm saying I like both pieces of media. I see the parallels and I see the connections. And as a YouTuber, you know, that's, without lying to you, that's really all I can do to make this case. One of these shows has, awkward fart jokes at parts in it that are really dissonant and take away from pretty much every other element. And the other one has, the nudity of minors is played for laughs. Awkward, weird, different ways, different... They're just not, they detract. A lot of you out there who are typing a, like, oh, but this is why one is better than the other, don't do that to yourselves. You don't have to be that person. And I'm not talking about either side of this, just you don't have to be that person. Things you like can have weird, dumb, bad, awkward moments. They can have flaws. I love the things I love despite their flaws. And yes, Berserk 2 is flawed, just like I think Centaurworld is flawed. But I equally love both of them. I love the uplifting sort of journey into finding these friends, this sort of fish out of water, seeing, like, you know, the tough, battle-hardened, battle-ready, you know, hard-ass find equals and find a family and become a part of things. And because, like, I've been there for about 10 years now. I've known some of the best D&D and Pathfinder players that any GM could have. And there was a long time that I thought that that friendship that we had built was entirely incumbent on my performance as their GM. That I had this responsibility to be the glue that held everything together. To be a sort of de facto patriarch, a family leader of sorts. It was a lot looser than that. I didn't enforce it. I felt it was enforced upon me. I felt as if I slacked in my responsibilities in any way, then these friends would view me as lesser, and that they would leave me. And it took me a long time to realize that that was absolutely not the case. That these are my best friends. That we've been through so much together. And that they see me as an equal. Not someone above them. Not some Ganishka to overthrow the gods, but just me. And then I could see me too. The real me. Kind of like Horse, you know, becoming a this. You know, becoming a cartoony that. That's what it felt like. And I think, like, that experience that I've had, I get the reminders of what that is from both Berserk and from Centaurworld. And I guess that's what I mean about the limitations of doing a YouTube video on this, is because I cannot convince you that is a worthwhile interpretation or reading. I can only provide you the evidence for how I arrived there, at that logic. I long ago realized that there's no point in trying to change people's minds with YouTube videos. But I think we can give people a little bit more than just kind of pandering to their confirmation bias. For a brief moment, we can open a window into somebody else's heart and soul. And they can look at that person and see what they may think of them, whether it's for good or for ill. But regardless, even though you are all viewers, I do want you to view me as an equivalent human being. That you and I, we aren't so different. And I don't mean that in the cliche, join me because we'll overthrow the gods. I mean, I'm lucky to be here. I am lucky to have the friends that I have. I do not regret this journey. But there are things that have happened in my life that have irreparably changed the way that I interact with the world. There are stories that I can't tell you about myself. And I'm sure all of you have stories that you cannot tell to people. And that, I think, is what is so great about some of these stories like Berserk and like Centaurworld as well, is that they can take those moments in life that we all have that are too scary for us to discuss with one another, with strangers. And they can sublimate them, and they can abstract them, and they can become a shared piece of consciousness that we can bond over, that we can feel like we are together on. There are certain pieces of media that you need perspective and miles on. And Berserk, I think it's one of those pieces of media. Because if you get into it young, or if you get into it and you haven't had much life experience, you probably don't know what an eclipse feels like. You don't know what that situation will do to you. And that's why this next section is going to be a little bit difficult. Because I want to talk about what comes after the final chapters that Kentaro Miura was able to illustrate and write. What becomes of these characters after their creator has tragically left us? The truth is, there is not a lot of material left. It's hard to form any sort of blanket judgment about new Berserk. But it is different. It was always going to be different. A loss like that, in a story that continues on, especially when it's continued on by people who loved and cared for the previous author, that's going to be palpable. That's going to bleed into the text. And I think one of the most striking images from the chapters after Miura's departure, it's this. Griffith abducting Casca on Zod. It's so crushing. It's not the eclipse. It's not a big dramatic culmination. It is simply a theft of all the joy that Guts had finally been able to reach. It's a theft that feels tragically reminiscent of how those of us who have made it this far into the story all must have felt losing Kentaro Miura and knowing that Guts' fate and the fate of his true companions in his world was yet unknown. I think one of the most interesting chapters we've gotten in this latest slate of Berserk is Casca in Falconia. There is something uncanny about the way that Casca has lost herself again. She has her faculties. She's not the person she was after the eclipse. She is herself again. But at the same time, what Griffith thinks of her has never been more obvious, more apparent. She is a piece of furniture in this strange place. She goes through the motions of happiness and joy, of comfort that she had never known in her real life. her being able to know herself again is not the same as being in control of herself. Not when Griffith is so petty as to step off the throne of heaven and try to settle old scores, as if he didn't give up his humanity. What right does he have to come back to treat these relationships like they weren't just means to an end? Like I said, there isn't enough to judge where this story is going. I can't say that overall I'm in a positive place with how I feel about Berserk right now. But also, I am not going to lose hope. I am not someone who's going to give up. Plenty of people have said that they are done with Berserk. Plenty of people well before that, at different stages, with different changes. The Sea God arc, before that, after Conviction, before that, the end of the Eclipse, the end of the Golden Age. There will always be people who stick their flag in the ground and say, this is where the end of Berserk is for me. And some of those people are creators that I deeply respect. I get the frustration. It isn't fair. Not Berserk. Not this life. Not the fact that it ends. And it will. For every single one of us. But for me, I think that Berserk, it helps ameliorate that struggle. That struggle that we all have to do. That struggle to do right by the people who we are lucky enough to still have with us. And I'm going to see it through. I'm going to see it through to the end.
Thank you all so much for watching. If any of you wretched weebs have made it to both the end of this video and the current latest chapter of Berserk, sound off in the comments. I'd love to hear from other fans of this series, if I didn't make that abundantly clear throughout the video. Also, let me know if you'd like some more of these unfiltered solo videos from me mixed in with our classic group comedy stuff. Also, share this video with a wretched weeb you know. Until next time, I'll be seeing you in the near future.